live on Plus TV Africa. It's no longer news that the People's Democratic Party, PDP, lost the elections and they're heading to court. Now, what could they have done differently? Some even suggest that they could have presented a different candidate. But to look at the win, we have in the studio this evening Barrister Jide Ologun. He's a legal practitioner, and of course Barrister Ngozi Akandu. Good evening, gentlemen. It's good to have you join us.
Good evening.
All right. So we'll just go straight into it. Of course, everybody's wondering what's the next step for the PDP. You know, when they were at the coalition center, the PDP's representative had voiced some concerns, which was responded to by Festus Keyamo, but they kept on saying that they would have hoped that INEC could have addressed some of the issues in certain centers where they outrightly cancelled. And this seems to be a new development for INEC, because it's never really happened that INEC will outrightly cancel an election and still go ahead and count it generally. I don't know. Why do you think INEC did this? Do you think that maybe those places that the elections were cancelled, they didn't think it was a big deal, or it would amount to nothing in, you know, the majority of the votes? I'll start with you, Barrister.
INEC is a creation of the law. And under the law, they have the privilege, I qualify it as privilege, to set guidelines and rules on managing the electoral processes. And within that wide spectrum of privilege, they have come out to conduct the elections. And one of such is the power to cancel when they deem it necessary to cancel, and other steps that it took. And even though PDP complained before the conclusion, the response was that, fine, you may have complaints, but can you officially channel them to INEC office, which was even open as at that time, and it will be attended to. So whether it will be late, because as we speak now, the return certificate has been handed over to the winner. But then, I have said it, that this is a moment when the rule of law should be courted by all stakeholders. You know, it's not a time to use force. And ahead of these elections, the tribunal has been constituted. So if you are not pleased with the results that came out of the processes, you can approach the tribunal. Though, as at this evening, Barrister Bakoba advised Atiku not to proceed in that direction. But the candidate for PDP, as we speak, has rejected the results and has promised, even though he has advised Nigerians to be calm, that he will take some steps. But how far he can go with that's another thing, which is also allowed by the laws of the land. And that's why we have the three arms of government, you know, the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. Okay. And the judiciary is right now the referee. And don't also forget that ahead of the elections, some shakeups took place in the Supreme Court, and some suspected that there must have been
an ulterior motive.
Exactly.
Yes. So, Barrister Akandu, does the PDP have a case here? Because some people are saying, look, there's so many facts and evidences out there that could, you know, they could build a case on. And some other people are saying, oh, it will just be a drag, and then at the end of the day, we'll just get back to business as usual. What's your take as a legal practitioner?
No, I can't outrightly say that PDP has a case or it does not have a case, because a lot of things are put into consideration. You know, we have about over thousands of polling units, you know, where they need to gather all the information and all their facts. But the thing there is that I would like to advise for the growth of our democracy, for them to not take it further than where we are now. Let us take a cue, examples from foreign countries. For example, in the United States, you can't say that they don't have electoral challenges. But every time a result is, you know, pronounced and somebody, you know, returned as president, you see the other candidate congratulating him for the growth. But
you're taking us too far.
We're
not the U.S. I mean, I always make reference to this. 20 2017, I was in Kenya, and it was in the heat of the elections between Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. And from the time I've always known Raila Odinga, he has never accepted any result, and he kept on challenging it. Let's look at Africa. It's the same problem in different countries in Africa. Every time we have elections, nobody actually says, oh, I congratulate you. Yeah. Except maybe for Liberia, when Ellen, you know, and then even when she handed over to the footballer. So really, is it not necessarily an African thing? We never really actually congratulate, aside from a Jonathan, which is the first time ever.
That is why it is very, very important for us to, you know, have a change of style here. Because you cannot say that in other clans where people accept defeat, there couldn't have been some irregularities recorded. But for the purpose of growth, you know, of our politics, for the purpose of growth of our, you know, democracy, I would advise that they take it calmly. But that is not to say that if you have an overwhelming evidence of, you know, irregularities to the extent that you could overturn the result that INEC has announced, that you shouldn't come out. When I was watching the previous people that was here, somebody was talking about, you know, it not being in our history for an incumbent president to be removed by the court.
No, President Jonathan was incumbent and he was taken out.
But you cannot now say that if you have an overwhelming evidence against, you know, the returning of a president, you shouldn't come out.
But could that also be that, you know, in a Nigerian system, when you have power, it's absolute power, and sometimes even the judiciary cannot upturn it? Maybe. I'm just saying, could it be? That's why the person had that position.
I don't think we have absolute powers in this country.
I
wouldn't expect us to, you know, go that far saying there is absolute power. Even though there have been semblances of, you know, somebody, you know, trying to be more powerful than they should be, but I wouldn't throw Nigeria away like that.
Now, there are also people who hold the opinion that, yes, there are videos of children voting this year, just like children voted in 2015, and nothing was really done about it. So why would we take this one seriously if we always gloss over these issues and then we end up not really taking it up at the end of the day?
You know, really, you have a constitutional right to challenge the process if you are not pleased with it. The sitting president now, who has just been returned, amiable President Muhammadu Buhari, challenged the results of the elections when he did not win, you know, up to the Supreme Court level. So if PDP wants to embark on that journey, why not? And like I said earlier, you know, there is a constituted body to handle that. You know, we have the tribunal. You know, whether he succeeds there or not depends on how he can establish his case as a candidate. And he has that local standard, like we say in law. And of course, there are issues that even the foreign observers pointed to. So we cannot claim to have had a perfect election. And part of testing the democratic system also is to challenge some of these shortcomings so that we move to the point where we are majorly transparent about, you know, the aspects of our electioneering processes. Because when you talk about democracy, it started in Athens in Greece, and the definition is the government of the people, by the people and for the people. And there are two sides to democracy. You have the procedural side, which is the elections we're talking about. You have the substantive side of democracy, which is the structure that is put in place to deliver results. So people's interests are involved here. And like I said, 4 years are in thousands of days. And electorates only have few days out of these thousands of days to come out and vote. So what they experience before the next elections matters a lot. And I think that is where the elements of desperation, underage voting, and like he brilliantly mentioned, why do you need the power? For example, let's visit our constitution, the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended. If you look at section 14, you read down to 16. it says that the security and the welfare of the citizens shall be the primary purpose of government. Section 16 says that the economy should be managed in a way that it provides happiness, prosperity to the people.
Everybody.
And somebody was asking, can we move to the level where it even becomes punishable if you make electoral promises, you go in there and you don't deliver on them? Because these are constitutional provisions.
Who's going to make that happen? Because I keep saying that when people say we have to make these laws, we have so many laws that have several interpretations that still lie fallow. I mean, we're not able to affect those laws, and we're still asking for more of these laws.
It's because we are not testing the laws.
Who's going to write
It's because we are not testing the laws. Recently, Femi Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, I think he had just a personal accident in Abuja. And he opted to sue the government, but I think he dropped it. If we pursue what we are entitled to, you see, Mike Murdoch said, you don't get what you deserve in business. You get what you negotiate. And that is why we should all be concerned. Governance is different from politics. Politics is the process of having organized control. Like some parties, maybe in some states, and at the center. Governance is how resources are managed resourcefully. Governance is about coming up with policies and implement those policies. And there are key areas of manifestation. If you look at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that will be evaluated by year 2030, zero hunger, zero poverty, decent work for all, water and sanitation,
right to education,
clean environment. These things are there because the spirit of the Sustainable Development Goals is that a human society should be a befitting society.
But then last year we topped the list for all of those things negatively. So again, are we really practicing a democratic system of governance where it is for the people, by the people, and in the interest of the people? But let's take a quick look at Atiku's video. Atiku Abubakar did respond to the results that was announced, which obviously declared President Muhammadu Buhari as the president-elect after the elections. Let's hear what he had to say.
Can you imagine, only yesterday by that May announcement, the stock market lost 85 billion. I urge you to be patient and keep faith with the Nigerian people. Your quarrel is not with the Nigerian people. Your quarrel is with those who stole their mandate. Please do not punish the people by divesting from Nigeria.
That's former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, presidential candidate of the PDP, and his response to the election results. And it's an interesting way to start it. It's like, can you imagine the stock market lost 85 billion? And of course, to give credit to him, he's been campaigning on the platform of the economy, talking about how to, rejig the economy and make it robust again, because obviously, like I said before we went on that break, we have been topping the charts for the wrong reasons. We become the poverty capital of the world. We have become the world open defecation capital of the world. All the negative things. We just literally were topping that list in 2018, and of course gave him an opportunity to say, hey, I have something better to offer. Well, he's pained by that. But you mentioned something earlier on about the fact that we need to explore or test these laws. But again, somebody on the other end would say, how strong is our judiciary? The Nigerian judiciary has been queried for a lot of things. They've said, we've had finger pointing, saying the judiciary is corrupt, it's compromised, that it used to be the hope of the common man, but now it's the law has one eye open. It sees the rich and the poor. And you are legal practitioners. I'm guessing this should be a slap on your face, but then it is what people are saying, and some of them is as a result of the experiences. What do you say?
All the laws are available for us to, take care of our community, of our country. And I wouldn't say that the judiciary is that poor. We still have some very vibrant.
But you do agree that there is some.
No, that the degree, the level of radicalism in the judiciary has kind of reduced when you compare in the previous years. But that is not to say that we don't still have judges in the country who can, wake up and look somebody in the face and tell them what should be. For example, during the time of the Rivers State and even the Zamfara State, challenges, we saw decisions that were going against.
There are people who say that those judges are sympathetic to another party, hence their judgment. There are speculations also.
That they were sympathetic to?
Yes, certain parties, and hence the reason why they stood their ground.
Well, when you look at the trend things were heading, you would have expected some of these judges to be afraid of making pronouncements, but they were very bold. You could give them that. You could give them that. So I'm not going to say that our judiciary is that bad, but we need to improve.
How do we strengthen the judiciary? How do we make it again to become as comely and as open-doored to the common man, because even the common man these days feels they have nowhere to run?
No, I disagree with that. We have multi-door courts, we have civil mediation. You talk about Lagos State. I tell some people you don't even need a lawyer to settle some cases. You go to the civil mediation centers. It's that willingness to pursue your case. And I think the area where we're having challenge is in the criminal justice arena. And in the criminal justice value chain, you have three basic elements. There's a need for thorough investigation, there is a need for diligent prosecution, and a committed judiciary. And as we speak now, in the criminal justice system, the accused is presumed innocent
until proven guilty.
Until proven guilty. And it is the responsibility of the prosecutor that represents the government to prove the case. Let's isolate the case of the former governor of Oyo State, Ladoja, that just ended. Many will be worried that with all these allegations, this man has been released to go because the judge said EFCC failed to be diligent in prosecuting that matter. Recently, the state account of a particular state was frozen in this country. It's not that EFCC does not have the power to freeze an account, but it must be based on a court order. And they've been slammed with fine for doing that. So you now see the exercise of governmental powers sometimes ahead of like putting the cart before the horse.
Yes, EFCC in 2017 lost at least 23 cases because they did not follow due process in prosecuting those people or presenting facts to the court, and so most of those cases were thrown out. So why not do due diligence before and we've seen a lot of
there was
media
a promise.
trials.
There was a promise in towards the 2015 election to change the burden of proof in criminal matters, and that was part of the elements of fighting corruption to the accused. That has not been done. You see, so maybe some steps we should take that will help us should be taken deliberately. I recall that early in 2015, we were bombarded with debates on whether to set up special courts to try corruption. And you now hear pronouncements coming from even those who are advising the government on corruption. They will come. In the case of Orubebe, that was the case of fraud. It was the Attorney General of the Federation that wrote to discontinue the case. So where do you go from there? So we still have vibrant judges in this country. Now look at what happened before the election. The suspension of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And we are still trying to handle that now like somebody trying to carry a pot from fire with bare
without
hands.
Gloves.
You see, because eventually, having suspended him, which was the intention over the weekend, we have now reverted to the National Judicial Council. So it's like we really need to, if we are going to respect the rule of law, let's respect the rule of law. We cannot be fighting the rule of law and expect justice in such a society. And these are things that are constitutional.
Yeah,
The rule of law states
as much as the legal, I mean, the judiciary obviously is an independent arm of government, which we all know. But as much as, you know, these lapses, it makes us wonder if the judiciary, you know, knows what it's doing, because it seems like it's a house divided against itself.
Lapses like what?
For example, the Rubebe case, and if a CJ, or rather an attorney general, writes to discontinue a case that should have been followed through, of course, it's a house divided against itself. So, and then there are too many interpretations of this law, and sometimes we, the average people who do not know legalese, we are left confused. So why can't the judiciary rally itself? Because if we do not have a concerted effort of sorts, then we will keep having these cases thrown out, or certain people walking free because we didn't follow through the process.
You know, the problem we always have is most of these, you know, cases that they bring to court, like he rightly said, these government bodies like the EFCC, they don't do thorough investigation. And he was talking about something like, you know, a law proposed to change the burden of, you know, proof. I wouldn't subscribe to that.
Why?
It should still remain how it is. And then you put the security agencies to task to do their job. Because if they do their job very well, they should be able to have a good case to, you know, present to the court. But where they don't do their job very well, you see them coming to court and, you know, babbling and then allowing, you know, somebody who would otherwise have been convicted of a particular crime getting away. Most of these cases that have been struck out and so on and so on, they were not struck out because there were no good cases, but they were struck out because the prosecution was poor. If you check some of the reasons that are given for this, they said that the prosecution is not diligently, lack of diligent prosecution. It doesn't mean that there couldn't have been a good case. But because the prosecution lacked diligence, they struck the matter out.
In other crimes, Barrister Jide, we see police officers, investigators, we see private investigators, we see informants, you know, doing a great job. They go out of their way to get information. But in these parts of the world, even our forensics, it's a bit, you know, dead.
Let me shock you. The intelligence capacity of the law enforcement agencies in Nigeria is huge.
But we don't see
the capacity is there. But we have a lot of influence on the deployment of the capacity. I'll give some great instances. Now, look at the case of the former governor of Ekiti State. Even though he was enjoying immunity, immunity does not prevent EFCC from investigating and warehousing their evidence until you step out of immunity. And the man submitted himself. He is being prosecuted. Compare that with the case of Ganduje, with the obvious videos and everything. You saw how that fizzled away. You saw how Babachi Lawal was brought for prosecution 15 months after he was suspended. And you see, I think we have foundational problems, not just looking at judiciary, a legislative body, or the executive. Are we really operating in a nationalistic manner, that we are interested in the development of the country? The same problem we have in the judiciary and everywhere, we have in the management of our resources. I have done some serious studies on the potentials of this country. The oil exploration in Nigeria started as far back as 1907. In 1956, we discovered oil in commercial quantity in Olobiri, in the Niger Delta region. By 1958, we joined the oil exporting body. Between 1963 and 1965, Shell BP built a refinery. As of today, we have 4 refineries in Nigeria. The world has about 700 refineries. South Africa has 6 refineries. They draw about 30% of crude oil from Nigeria, 40% from Saudi Arabia. And as of today, NNPC was established in 1977. We spend 1.4 trillion naira on under-recovery, otherwise known as subsidy. Can we claim to be a serious country? You see, so you now wonder why the refineries are not functioning. So the question now is that, do we have interest in developing this country? Do we have any business being the capital of poverty? You know, the biggest...
And we claim to be the big brother of Africa.
We are, because we supply
economy.
electricity to Niger Republic and Benin Republic.
No,
Some of us challenge an intended project, which is the construction of railway line to Maradi. Maradi is one of the big cities in Niger Republic. Have we finished with Nigeria? And I understand there is a refinery jointly built by Niger and Nigeria. So these are the issues. I think we have diverted our attention from the people of this country, what they should benefit, why we and how we should come together. And under the Constitution, there is an obligation of national integration. We should all come together. Your business should not constitute a threat to my business. I was advising on the cattle colony, the grazing route and everything. India has about 300 million cows, more than the population of Nigeria, and nobody is killing anybody because of ranching. My amiable president has a ranch, beautiful ranch. Then why can't others go and learn how he developed his own ranch, go to the banks to borrow money, and ensure that our diversification efforts succeed? So we cannot be seeking to move and be attacking that movement. It takes us nowhere.
All right, let's come back to the Atiku issue. If we are talking about all of these problems that the judiciary is facing, the executive, I mean, because all of these, as independent as all of these parts are, they also have to work in tandem with one another. The legislature is there to write these laws and pass them. And of course, you know, it goes around to the judiciary and the executive. So, but do we see any headway with the judiciary as it is right now, and an Atiku or the PDP, you know, carrying this case to... seeing it to a certain end? I'm just wondering, because you're saying the judiciary is still trying to handle the issue of Onogan, and then we have an acting CJN. Is this case going to see the light of day, or it's just going to be one of those cases, like you said, about the governor who was caught on camera, just swept under the carpet, and then we move on as business as usual? You
know, with sincerity of governance and purpose, we can move forward. Permit me to use the isolated case of a former governor of Delta State who escaped all the long arms of the law in Nigeria but was jailed for 13 years in the UK. I monitored that case. The judge said it was not the business of the judge to evaluate his performance in office when some people traveled all the way to the UK to give evidence that...
but that was as a result of the failure on the part of Nigeria's judiciary.
The failure is because we have allowed it.
If the UK did not try
let me ask you a question. Can a judge go and grab an accused person and bring the person to court? We are still saying the same thing. It's the business of the law enforcement agent to start the investigation, to charge the accused to court. Where nobody is... Look at Desiani. Desiani says she was ready to come to Nigeria. We said we didn't want her to come. Now we are pursuing her to bring her. We need to get serious. And my warning is that crime is crime. And somebody said you don't complain about what you condone. I'm worried about the growing rate of crime in this country. If we have laws, let's implement our laws. And let not a group of people or a set of Nigerians appear to be above the law. And if we begin to do that, things will fall in place. But as long as we allow unnecessary influence to manipulate the processes, it's dangerous. And my warning also is that if you are benefiting today, it may work against you today. Do your research. It's not the party who started involving the military in elections that is strengthening it now. The party that started it is suffering from that culture that was introduced into democracy. So if it is working for you today, it can work against you tomorrow. And I think our aggregate interest should be, how do we move forward and catch up with the world? Go and study Brunei. Brunei was a very poor country, and they discovered oil and gas. Today, that country is swimming in wealth. Look at Netherlands. At the time, Netherlands shut about 19 prisons. In fact, they even import prisoners from Norway, and so that the prison officials can have work to do. They have dealt with insecurity in their communities. Look at the UAE. Sheikh Zayed of UAE, started managing that country, and within 38 years, he translated a desert to a paradise. If you are a big business tycoon and you are not doing business in Dubai, you are not meeting in Dubai, you know what that means now.
All right.
And that's why some of us are hopeful that Nigeria is great. That greatness will manifest, but we need leadership.
I'm guessing we need to pray for it to manifest instead of acting.
No. Look at Rwanda.
Well,
Look at Tanzania.
Let's hold on the business side. Let's go back to Agbakoba. Agbakoba has said that Atiku should. He's advising him to avoid going to court. He said that he knows that he has a strong position to take up the mantle of a statesman in the country by avoiding litigation over this election. He urged Atiku Abubakar not to lose sight of the legacy of greatness that lies in front of him despite that result. In fact, he says, I understand the PDP is aggrieved about the outcome of the election and alleged massive irregularities, but I urge the Vice President not to approach the election petition tribunal. This is not to say that I do not recognize the massive irregularities in the 2019 presidential election, but I can see how tempting it is to take up the option of election petition tribunal, but that, in my view, is not the right decision. I'm wondering, why would he say that? Is it because, again, he has no trust, or he doesn't feel that the judiciary is capable of delivering?
First of all, let me say that I align myself with the advice of Olisa Agbakoba.
Why?
But that is not to say that the judiciary is completely bad in this country. But now you have to look at the bigger picture. You have to also have a kind of foresight. In circumstances like this, you have to look at history, the past. And then from your history, you try to project what the future will be like. At the end of the day, will I be able to overturn what has happened?
But Atiku does have antecedents. Let's look at Atiku's antecedents. Atiku has lost several elections. I mean, this is the upteenth time he's running for presidency. I mean, some people are saying this would have been the time, he was ripe enough to take this, but we haven't really seen him outrightly reject a result. So for an Atiku to reject a result, do you not think that he obviously has some...
Okay, let us say this should be his first reaction. But now, the winner was declared just this morning, right? Now that should be, we expect it to be his first reaction. But at the end of the day, he is expected to sit down, ask questions, because he wasn't everywhere in the country while in the election, the votes
but they did have people in the different parts of the country.
I am not saying that if at the end of the day he has very good reasons to believe that his challenge will succeed, he shouldn't go to court. But on the face of it right now, I wouldn't advise him to go to court without, first of all, knowing or having reasonable grounds to believe that he will succeed.
Well, Agbakoba is saying here that he feels that, yes, of course, it will be painful to lose an election, but he feels that Atiku can take up the opportunity to build a third force in the polity as greatness lies in front of him. Is that trying to say he might have to run again? I mean, because I'm just wondering, maybe it's time for him to stop and be a statesman. I'm just wondering. Is that what Agbakoba means?
If I can peek into the heart of Olisa Agbakoba, he's one of those that may likely emerge as candidates, you see, and of course, towing that line, I think we should focus more on the relevance of political parties. I said it. It should not just be about winning elections. There are various outflows of amenities that should be in a decent society. Can the parties begin to engage them? I commend PDP, interestingly, because I did not even expect that with the level of goodwill delivered to APC in 2015, that PDP will find their bearing in the next 20 years. So for that level of challenge, I commend PDP. It's now time to ensure that we deliver on our electoral promises. On the parts of the electorate, we have played our own part. In the law of contract, there is offer and acceptance, there is part performance. We have done our part performance, and we just have to go back home and now wait for the dividends. I think what the political parties should be doing now is to ensure that the government that is driving the privilege of managing the country deliver on their promises. And there are various ways to do that. And if that is done, they find their ways into the hearts of Nigerians. Let me tell you, when the time is right, a candidate may not need to approach a tribunal. The people themselves will rise up and say, no, we will not accept this. You see, but then, if this country, and beautifully enough, APC has a very simple assignment. Their promises are encapsulated in 3 areas: fighting corruption, improving the economy, and ensuring security. And they have been given the mandate. They control the MDAs. The MDAs are the ministries, the departments, and the agencies. They control the resources of the country. They control the money. If the money at home is not enough, they can borrow. As at the last count, the indebtedness of Nigeria stood at 22.43 trillion naira. You see, but let's see the visible impact. And are these things possible? Yes, they are. If you even look at some of the things we enjoyed as we approach the elections, you may be smiling. In some areas, power supply became regular. Drive on Third Mainland Bridge, you see touch on the bridge.
But was that not a way to butter people up for the votes? I mean,
if it is, I'm talking about possibility. I think also the people do not know what they are entitled to. Sometimes I wish I've not had the opportunity of traveling to some other countries in this world. Maybe I would just assume that this is how a society should be.
But we also have those are leaders who are supposed to be, who we put there, in quote, to do the job. They go to these countries, they see these amenities, and they don't think it's wise to give it to the people. And again, just as you said, we the people, maybe we are not yet learned enough to ask questions and demand accountability, hence the reason why we're still in 2019 and we're still talking about the issue of power. Maybe.
Yeah, but you see, the point is that we quickly run over issues. You know, the government, because I'm talking about government in continuum, I'm not separating one party from the other.
All right.
Promise us Vision 2020. That means Nigeria will be one of the greatest 20 economies in the world by year 2020. We are just 1 year to 2020 and we are the capital of poverty.
That's not going to happen.
That tells the people that don't just sit back. Some of us are not sitting back. We are suggesting what can be done. We are mobilizing, in fact, across states. Younger ones, right now there are some candidates who were victorious at the last elections that the community people are already engaging. We started that. In fact, they are the ones now going after these young ones that they need to, what can we do? Because you need to impact society. I just cannot imagine that a country that probably has the second largest deposit of bitumen in the whole world cannot boast of good roads. If only to transport food from the villages to where people need to feed very well and link up businesses. But we get there, but it's not by keeping quiet. We must keep talking.
All right, Barrister Kandu, how do we see all of this playing out quickly as we round up? Okay. What do we see happening in the next few months? Do we see an Atiku, finally just letting go and moving on, maybe with Agbakoba's, advice? Where do we see all of this going? Being that the president's result has been already announced and he's been returned, do we see any changes happening anytime soon?
Well, I see him coming down. I'm going to be very, very straight on that. I see him coming down at the end of the day for the common good. And then I see us hoping that this present government will be better than what
Should
it
we
was
just hope?
previously.
I mean, we've been hoping for years and praying to God. We're very good at praying.
Well, I can't throw Nigeria away.
We're always leaving everything to God.
Country,
when are we going to act? And is it just hope?
And then I advise people to be more outspoken. be more prepared to hold this government to task. Be more prepared to demand your rights and entitlements from them, from the government. Because, like he rightly said, we are more interested in politics than in governance in this country. But it's time for us to refocus and begin to look at governance. We have suffered a lot, we have suffered enough. It's high time we started looking at finding a way to join the League of Nations in this world. You know, so that things can get a bit better.
And how we do that is to begin to place a demand on these people who we put in office.
The laws are there to be implemented. It's for us to be calling on them to make sure that these laws are implemented.
I want to say thank you to you, Barrister Jide Ologun and Barrister Ngozi Akandu. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for an interesting conversation.
Thank you.
All right.
God bless Nigeria.
Thank you for staying with us. We'll take a short break. After this, Nigeria Decides will continue in earnest. Stay tuned.